Happy Saturday, everyone. Josh's severe weather. We've got a major storm moving through the country here this weekend into early next week, but that's not going to be it. Another big storm likely to start off in parts of the Southwest and Texas just a few days later, and that could be a problem heading into the end of the week into next weekend. I am going to talk quite a bit about that here, but I do want to focus on the storm at hand first. So I appreciate you joining me here on this Saturday afternoon or evening, wherever you are, where you can see the cold air is on its way down. Below zero temperatures across the Dakotas and Minnesota, and pretty cold here across the Northeast and the Midwest here. We have temperatures into the teens and 20s across the Eastern Lakes, New England, parts of the Rockies here, but it is pretty warm across the South, and we have to watch this portion of our storm as well, as we will have warm air clashing with the cold air and the potential for a significant outbreak of severe weather as well for the day tomorrow. Here's a look at our hazards map right now. Very colorful, which is not a good thing in the world of weather, unfortunately. You can see pinks indicate areas of winter storm warnings, purples, winter weather advisories, blues, winter storm watches. And then in between, we actually have now, and I mentioned this was a possibility yesterday, a blizzard warning over parts of the Central Plains. And we're going to zoom in on that just to show you what's going on in that part of the country here. So we do have this blizzard warning. That is the area in red here. I'll circle it because I know it can be a little bit tough to see depending on what device you have, but it includes central and eastern Kansas and much of northwestern Missouri. This is Kansas City here. I believe Topeka's about here, Wichita down in here. So some of these spots are likely going to see pretty much shut down roads during the afternoon tomorrow into tomorrow night as winds get up to about 40 miles per hour. The visibility gets very low, and it will be snowing very hard. Just a really nasty setup here, but that's not the only part of the storm. I'm going to take you a little bit farther east into the Ohio Valley, and you can see down here in the pink, we have an ice storm warning. And there will be ice all the way up to maybe the I-70 corridor for a while, but farther down, less snow and more ice, freezing rain, and especially some sleet over maybe portions of, say, Cape Girardeau and the eastern Ozarks and over to downstate Illinois, southwest Indiana, and parts of western and northern Kentucky are likely going to see some significant ice. And the kind of ice that could cause power outages for significant periods of time in this area. So we're going to have to watch that as well. This will also be a significant storm farther to the east over the mid-Atlantic region, in particular Maryland and West Virginia, but also northern and central parts of Virginia, heading into Delaware, southern PA, South Jersey. This will be one of our bigger storms in a few winters, which isn't really saying a lot. We just haven't had a whole lot of winter. So quite a bit to talk about here. You can see on the satellite map where our storm is centered right now. This is the spin up here over the central Rockies here. You see a southwesterly flow here, sending moisture up into Texas and the southern plains, but there's also cold air coming down in here. So we've got this warmer layer of air that's going up and over a shallow layer, sorry about that, tongue twister, of colder air, and that's leading to some frozen precipitation this afternoon and evening in this portion of the country, especially across Kansas, where we have some very slippery roads. Now, over time, the cold air continues to funnel in from this direction, but we also have warm air surging in this direction. So where they're meeting is where we're going to be dealing with significant problems here tonight, and especially tomorrow and tomorrow night as we move this on to the east. Now, the Storm Prediction Center has some key messages here talking about how severe the storm is going to be. And you can see here, we've got areas in red where there's going to be major impacts. I think they're going to end up expanding that here with the blizzard warning, maybe even extreme impacts. But you can see a good chunk here of Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Kentucky, and even southern Ohio has some significant impact coming here where we're going to be dealing with considerable disruptions to daily life. That may include school closings as we get into Monday and certainly closed businesses for tonight and tomorrow. The most likely winter hazards going to be snow from Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, eastward into PA, and basically right along Interstate 70, if you want to call it that. But we also have a wintry mix, including sleet, snow, and some freezing rain in this area in purple here from central Missouri eastward into West Virginia, and also an area east of the Appalachians across western and central Virginia, all the way over to the northern neck and the middle peninsula, and even into the southern Delmarva, eastern Maryland, Ocean City, Rehoboth Beach. Those areas have a risk of mixed precipitation. Farther south, not really a snowstorm for you, but an ice storm. Freezing rain from the Ozarks on eastward across much of Kentucky, southern West Virginia, far northern parts of Tennessee, and right up against the mountains here of North Carolina, Northeast Tennessee, and Southern Virginia here. The possibility of significant freezing rain. There could be a little freezing rain a little farther south and east of this, but probably not much that's going to cause major issues. But certainly an ice storm across this area here, and that's where we're going to have our biggest issues here outside of the snow. And, you know, I talked about this being an epic storm for some. I know back in the day we had much more epic storms, but for some, this could be the heaviest snowfall in over a decade. So for kids that are 10 and younger, this will be the biggest one you've seen so far in a few places, maybe in Kansas and Nebraska and Missouri. So anyway, that's what we're looking at with this storm system. I'm going to show you the NAM model just so you can see how things evolve. This is this evening. Snow spreads south and east here into Nebraska, northern Kansas, and Missouri. Overnight, we start to see things going downhill once we get to the Mississippi and Ohio River Junction and Missouri Junction as well. And our storm center is going to take a track from the Rockies, basically through the panhandle of Texas and into Oklahoma. South of that low, there will be a warm air mass coming northward. North and west of that low, you can see the cold air coming down from this strong area of high pressure in central and western Canada. And where the two come together, we also have a strong upper level low here, as indicated by the NAM, basically where our heaviest snow rates are going to fall, especially on the southern side of that, over northern portions of Kansas and moving into northwest Missouri. So this is going to be tomorrow afternoon, about 3 o'clock Central Time. We'll see snow moving east and southeast into southern Ohio, into West Virginia, into western parts of Virginia. Ice will start picking up in intensity south of this zone of heavy snow, and we're going to see thunderstorms and maybe severe weather as well from southwest Tennessee all the way down through Mississippi, Louisiana, and maybe far southeast Texas during the afternoon, moving eastward. The low is going to track northeastward, but it's going to run into the cold air, so we still have a threat for ice in the morning on Monday, as some folks may be trying to get out to work in places like Roanoke and Beckley here in West Virginia. Heavy snow over portions of the mid-Atlantic, and that spreads eastward here. If you are in the Hampton Roads area, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of wintry weather out of this. Maybe briefly, but it's primarily a rainstorm. But as this low moves offshore, it strengthens. And you will also see on the backside, there will be a thumping of some heavy wet snow here for places like Richmond and maybe all the way over to Williamsburg, Isle of Wight counties here into the night on Monday night. Not a big storm, though. If you're basically from I-80 on northward, you may get next to nothing here. And I'm going to break down kind of some more local geography here in a little bit. In the west, we are dealing with a big rainstorm. Again, heavy mountain snow tonight. You can see that's going to move out, and then tomorrow we get a break, and then more comes towards the end of the day, especially across Oregon and moving into Idaho and northern Nevada. You can see here, though, our big storm cranking. Not really a Denver, Colorado Springs storm, but you will get a little bit of snow in those areas, more so, though, in the ski resort areas. You will see those snow coming all the way down to the Oklahoma and Texas border, maybe all the way down to places like Perryton early in the day tomorrow. You can see snow is going to pick up in intensity across Kansas and Nebraska as our low deepens and begins to pull eastward here and our trough strengthens. And then after that, things are going to quiet down pretty significantly Monday and into Tuesday of next week. We're going to take you over here to the plains and the south central states. And this is going to be close to midnight tonight. There will be some significant snow in eastern Colorado, but bigger problems here in the pink, where we're going to have heavier sleet near and to the north of Wichita and all the way up to Interstate 70 over to Kansas City. Freezing rain in pink. That includes Wichita and goes back into northwest Oklahoma and maybe even to the Texas Panhandle. And then it's a lot warmer when you get south of this boundary here into places like Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So we are going to have rain and maybe a few thunderstorms here overnight tonight. Tomorrow, it all advances quickly eastward. But you can see here, and I'll circle it for you, there are pockets of purple within this blue, and that indicates very heavy snow. That's where the blizzard conditions set up. This is about 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, Central Time, 10 Eastern. We also have this area of very heavy snow that breaks out across Illinois and southwestern Indiana. Indianapolis is about here. St. Louis is about here. In between the two is where the problems are going to be pretty significant here with this heavy snow. It's going to take a while for the snow to move out here as we move this along into the afternoon hours. You will see snow changing over or flirting with sleet and freezing rain. It's going to be kind of a mixed bag, a mixed mess in southern Illinois and Indiana here. And I'm going to take you east as well in a minute. You'll see the snow continues in Nebraska, southern Iowa, northern and central Missouri until the evening hours and then gradually winds down. But the wind stays strong here. So later tomorrow evening into the overnight hours, we're not out of the woods. We're still going to have things like blowing snow and freezing temperatures and roads that just continue to deteriorate as temperatures are going to drop here. And then we have drier weather returning on Monday, but it could still snow in the morning here in the lower Ohio Valley. We're going to take a look down south here, and then I'll talk about the Ohio Valley. Showers, maybe a few thunderstorms here. For the most part, though, relatively quiet overnight tonight. But tomorrow we'll start to see a line of storms that develops here along our front from near Hot Springs down into the Arklatex region and maybe all the way down to places like College Station. And we've got to keep an eye on this line here as the wind flow is going to strengthen. The threat for severe weather continues to increase, and there may be a few embedded tornadoes. Now, I don't think this is going to be to the magnitude of what we saw here a week ago Saturday with that moderate risk, but the same exact places are under the gun again, and a lot of you took on damage last weekend, so this is definitely not what you want to hear. So unfortunately, we see this area peaking in intensity around 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, continuing into western Mississippi early in the evening. There's still a tornado threat. And then as that line moves farther south and east, we see that down in Baton Rouge and eventually New Orleans here late tomorrow evening and moving into western Alabama, southern and eastern Mississippi as well. And we could see thunder, or we could hear thunder and see lightning all the way up to the Kentucky-Tennessee border here during the evening with temperatures struggling to get out of the 30s and low 40s. So just a very dynamic storm system here. As the system pushes east, you will see it runs into colder air east of the Appalachians, so we have to worry about some icing in parts of the foothills and mountains here for a while in the morning on Monday, perhaps even Sunday night farther to the west. We're also going to see that warmer air surging up to where this changes over to rain in places like Charleston and maybe all the way up to near Bridgeport and Clarksburg and not too far from Morgantown for a brief amount of time until it turns colder again. Now, if you're in Florida, you're missing most of this, but you are going to have some heavier storms in the morning Monday across the Panhandle. Same goes for South and Central Georgia. And we do have a risk for a little bit of stronger storms here across the coastal plain of North Carolina by afternoon on Monday. That threat goes all the way down close to Jacksonville and Lake City. But by the time this front gets down into Florida, it does start to peter off. It gets colder, but for the most part, it's not a major front. It's just going to be a wind shift and some rain, and then it comes to an end. Now, on the backside here Monday night, interestingly, it could be raining at the coast, including the Hampton Roads region, but going back to snow along the I-85 corridor. And if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area and on northward and westward, don't think we're talking a big storm until you get north of, say, Lake Gaston, but we are talking about the potential to see a thumping of some wet snowflakes, kind of that snow globe effect here. So that would be early in the evening here, about 6 to 7 o'clock, and then eventually making it to the coast around 9, 10, 11 o'clock. And there could be a decent amount of snow overnight on the Delmarva, eastern shore of Virginia, Cape Charles, those areas, Machipongo, over to Ocean City and Berlin here in Maryland here overnight. Monday night. So maybe some problems with schools being delayed early on Tuesday as well. Here's a look at the Northeast. We do have lake effect bands, but we miss most of this storm here. You can see, though, Indiana and Ohio are going to see some significant amounts of snow falling here later tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. In southern PA, right along the Mason-Dixon line, and especially Maryland and eastern and northern West Virginia, this will be a substantial snowfall for you. Around D.C., especially those western suburbs, Loudoun County, Clark County, down to Harrisonburg, Stanton, Winchester, there is a potential for some ice here, but I think we're primarily talking about heavy snow if the NAM is correct. But there will be mixing just south of the district. So Monday, there could be some sleet and freezing rain mixed in, say in Fairfax and Prince William and Arlington counties, Alexandria. Southern Maryland could even go over to a bit of rain in, say, St. Charles and St. Mary's counties. And then we see kind of just a mix around Annapolis and then the eastern shore of Maryland. So central Delaware, South Jersey, a mix going back to snow. Once you get north of places like Allentown and I-78, it's not going to be much, just a light amount of snow, but there could be slick spots. Pittsburgh, a few inches of snow, but more off to your south. And we also are going to see some lake effect bands coming in behind this system. So here's a look at the total amount of precipitation, just to give you all kind of an idea of what this looks like. You can see where the snow falls. This is sleet down in here, and then here's freezing rain, and some places are going to get all three, unfortunately. Pretty significant totals here over portions of Missouri into Illinois and probably Kansas as well here. And this is right on through tomorrow night. Here's a look at what the NAM is showing as far as total snowfall here, and There will be some variability quite a bit. You can see amounts here topping out close to 2 feet near the Nebraska-Kansas border, according to the NAM. Other models not quite as bullish, but they are significant enough. Whether you get a foot or two, it's going to shut you down for a while. But you can see here, this stretches all the way over into Ohio. I am going to zoom in a little bit more closely just so you can kind of see these amounts here. We'll start you with Kansas first. And you can see locally up to 23 inches in places like Beatrice, Nebraska, and 20 inches or so around Topeka and up to maybe St. Joseph, Missouri. So pretty significant here. As we take you to the right here, to the east, and also southern Iowa. This is going to be a big storm for you just south and east of Omaha as well. As we take you, though, farther to the east, you'll see there'll be some places that maybe don't get quite as much, but still for central Illinois into central and southern Indiana, this is going to be a big-time storm. Not so much, though, in Tennessee. We do have some small accumulations possible on the backside here, but this really isn't going to be a snowstorm for you, just going to be a little bit of snow. And then as we take you into the mid-Atlantic, you'll see the potential for locally 8 to 12 inches of snow right along this border, but it cuts down sharply as we go farther north of the Pennsylvania Turnpike into places like Harrisburg and certainly farther north than that. So definitely a big system here to talk about here. Here's a look at what the NAM is showing for total snow, just a broader view of everything. There'll be some lake effect to talk about, some wraparound snow in New England, some snow across New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, but you can see this is a pretty big storm considering how we've really kind of gotten ripped off over the last couple of winters here with all the warm air. And we also see that potential for some snow in parts of Virginia here. And I'm going to take you there just so you can see what's going to happen here on the backside. So again, let me find Virginia. I guess I lost it. That's all right. We'll get the Shenandoah up here so you can see. And you can see here, there's a potential to see a couple of inches around Richmond and back towards Farmville and Appomattox and towards Roanoke, Lynchburg, maybe a few inches of snow here. And in the mountains of North Carolina and East Tennessee, we're going to see a little bit of snow as well. But a lot of that's actually going to be behind the system. We're going to see a little bit in the front, then it changes over, then goes back to snow. And you can see here, if you're south of Virginia Beach, it's not looking too promising for significant amounts of snow. Here's just a look at Indianapolis, and you can see there's a big spread in our short-range models from a few inches to as much as 18, but the average is about 10. So that's Indianapolis. Here's Baltimore. About 11 inches is about our mean, but we have many models that are down closer to 4, but some as much as 16. So again, this is going to be a highly variable storm. And the other challenge we're going to be dealing with here is sleet. And you will see here a couple of inches of sleet basically following I-70 from Kansas all the way to about Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. And then another area to watch here across Virginia and southern and eastern portions of Maryland. And I'll show you Delaware and South Jersey. We could see a little bit of sleet there as well. Freezing rain is going to be a problem. You can see here major icing up to about an inch to an inch and a quarter of glaze in parts of Kentucky, Indiana, southern Illinois, and Missouri. Probably not your worst ice storm ever, but this is going to be very significant. It's going to cause a lot of problems. Once we get into the mid-Atlantic and into the mountains of North Carolina, things are a little bit better, but this will cause some issues here with up to a third to maybe a half of an inch of ice over parts of West Virginia, places like Greenbrier and Upshur County, and then on eastward here into parts of southern Delaware and eastern Maryland. So we've got that. We've got a big temperature drop coming here. Take a look at this. This is overnight tonight. You can see the front progressing quickly southward here as temperatures tumble. It's going to feel like it's in the 60s in the morning in Dallas, but end the day feeling like it's in the 20s and low 30s. Sub-zero temperatures, wind chills on top of that blowing snow is going to create very dangerous travel here in the Central Plains. And you can see where the warm air is surging northward as well. I do want to bring up Chicago because there is a possibility of some lake effect here as the storm is going by to your south. You can see this band here later tomorrow night into Monday could drop a few inches on the shore. Basically, the north side of Chicago, the western suburbs, right on up into Waukegan and Racine, and maybe all the way up to Milwaukee. We could see a band here that dumps a few inches of snow. So maybe your own private snowstorm. And eventually the flow is going to turn it into northwest Indiana later Monday night. And some places like Gary and Portage could pick up a couple of inches. But Chicago may not get the main storm, but you're going to have your own little private storm. Now let's look at the severe weather threat here tomorrow afternoon and night. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, there's an enhanced risk for severe weather now. It was slight yesterday, but I thought it would get an upgrade. Here you can see the area under the gun. 10% chance of tornadoes in that Arkla-Miss region, the Delta region as well, which includes Yazoo City, Rolling Fork, Jackson, Monroe, maybe even Alexandria, and significant wind threat here as well, as we have this line of storms set to march through Louisiana. Starting in Texas, by the way, here around lunchtime, but moving through northern Louisiana. And the one thing we've got to watch out for here initially are the storms that can fire up ahead of the main line. Some of these could have enough rotation with them to be kind of some individual supercells. Even though the main line is about an hour behind that, until it catches it, we do have to watch out, as there will be enhanced wind shear with that. You'll see the line marches eastward here. This is 4 or 5 o'clock tomorrow. Beaumont could see more storms just like last weekend, Lake Charles, and then it gets to Lafayette and Baton Rouge here in the evening hours. Jackson gets hit around 6 or 7 o'clock, Meridian and Hattiesburg later in the evening, New Orleans, Slidell, Mandeville here about 9, 10, 11 o'clock. And it is going to weaken as it tracks eastward here. And I can show you Alabama and Mississippi to give you an idea of that timeline here. So yeah, we're watching these storms here. Again, I don't think this is a repeat of last weekend, but the same areas are going to be at risk. And even northwest Alabama, you need to keep an eye on this as it moves into your direction here tomorrow night around 8, 9, 10 o'clock. When it gets into Georgia and the Florida Panhandle, it does look like it loses some punch. But there could still be a tornado or a stronger wind gust here overnight tomorrow night, ending on Monday. Real quick, I did want to show you Arkansas, because you're not totally out of this risk as well. You can see Little Rock and especially Pine Bluff early in the afternoon tomorrow. We've got to be watching. Even maybe Jonesboro and West Memphis, West Helena, and eventually Oxford, Mississippi here in the early evening hours. So this is going to be somewhat dangerous. Definitely keep an eye on this system as it tracks in your direction. Things can change very quickly. When we get farther east, though, this threat for severe weather does start to dwindle. And I do want to take you into the southeast here, as there will be a bit of a marginal risk for some severe weather on Monday. I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad, though. This is moving in the morning, and that's not typically the timeline for severe weather. So we do have a threat for hail tomorrow, and then we've got this marginal risk, mainly in the morning on Monday, all the way east to Jacksonville. All right, so did want to show you tornado parameters are looking more impressive with each model run here, so we do need to watch this here with kind of a 3 to 6 o'clock as our main time frame for the worst of it. But even into the overnight hours, we're going to still have to keep an eye on that. All right, so let's talk about the storm I teased you with here in the thumbnail. This system is moving out. We've got another trough dropping into the southwest, and that cuts off, as you can see on the European model here, towards the middle of next week. Now, the cold air is feeding southward here. You can see this flow from the north. This is sending cold air down in this direction here. So the middle of next week, second half of next week, we've been talking about it. It's going to be very cold. Here's a piece of the polar vortex, but then we've got this cutoff low. Eventually, that low is going to move into the colder air, and we're going to have to track it and see how exactly it behaves. But you can see here, it starts to make progress Thursday of next week towards Texas, and then later in the week towards the central states, and eventually up the East Coast here next weekend. As a classic track for a significant storm, but there's a lot of details that we need to kind of iron out. So as we take a look ahead here into Thursday, you can see our storm gets cranking here across New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. This is Thursday afternoon, and we see all kinds of nasty weather potentially here. It is going to move east, so this is going to be too warm for anything but rain and storms on the Gulf Coast, but farther north, Tennessee Valley, Mid-South, and eventually up into the Northeast here, we do have winter storm potential. And the models are indicating this system could strengthen as it moves out into the Northeast here over the weekend. The European has that happening across Atlantic Canada and Maine. The GFS model, now this is just one run, so don't get too caught up in it, but it has that bombing out of the storm coming a lot closer to the East Coast. In fact, it's got a major storm for the Northeast here Saturday night and Sunday. And this is just the one run I've seen that shows it. So right now it's a little bit too early to get too specific on that. You can see the ensemble is showing a pretty good chance for snow from Colorado into Mexico and even Mexico on through Dallas-Fort Worth, southern Oklahoma, and then eventually into the mid-south here. And the model ensemble average is 5 to 6 inches in North Texas, including the Metroplex. Now, the actual European operational is more. The latest run is showing a major storm here, potentially a foot of snow in this area. And again, it's just one model, so we can't get too locked into it yet, but something we're going to be watching. The GFS model does have the same areas under the gun, but not as much for Texas and Oklahoma, but more as we head into Tennessee and Kentucky. And it also, unfortunately, here has a freezing rain threat into northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and all the way down into the hill country of Texas, northern Mississippi as well. Farther east, this is going to be a system to watch as well here as we get towards the end of next week. Unfortunately, if you want to see snow on the Gulf Coast or in Georgia or South Carolina or even eastern North Carolina, I don't think the setup is looking nearly as tantalizing as it did a few days ago, but we've got to watch it. If you take a look at the latest European, it says it's looking great once it gets to the mountains and then kind of falls apart when it gets into places like Raleigh and Charlotte and Columbia. But this could be a significant storm nonetheless. And you can see as well, the Europeans got some pretty hefty totals from Boston on up to the north and east. The GFS has even worse. I'll show that to you here. And again, this is probably a northeast snow weenies dream here, but it's showing over 20 inches across New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York City. And again, I think this will probably change significantly. I think the main flavor of this forecast right now is that we do need to watch this system as it comes up here. And certainly we're going to have problems across this portion of the South. And unfortunately, those of you that are really wishing for snow despite the cold just aren't going to be pleased with this in the Southeast. Freezing rain, also a potential problem down the road here. This is this weekend storm and Monday storm. Here's the next one, and I'll just kind of outline it for you. But this is the area we've got to watch here later next week for some potential freezing rain and sleet as well. So that's it for the U.S. Big storm hitting the UK and Western Europe here. I did want to mention this. I know some of you are watching from Europe. Take a look at this one. Cranking up over southern Ireland with heavy snow that moves into Wales and Scotland and northern England. We're seeing heavy snow moving into Scandinavia and probably some severe weather across parts of Spain and France as well. Take a look at some of these potential snow totals over the next few days. As much as 60 centimeters of snow in northern England and 55 to 60 centimeters in southern parts of Ireland, and of course quite a bit for Norway. So this is going to be a major storm for Europe over the next couple of days as well. So appreciate everybody's time today. I know, again, we went long. We've just got a lot to talk about, but more videos to come here, wrapping up the storm we're dealing with now and talking about the next one and talking about other threats coming down the road. Hope you all have a safe weekend. I'll try to get back on tomorrow, but as always, I just want to leave you with a word of encouragement. I'm a Christian, and I give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. James 1:17, King James Version. And people know me as the weather guy here in Raleigh. They know I'm a meteorologist. They know I'm a dad. They know I work hard. But above all else, I am a child of God. And I want to share that encouragement with you today because I believe that truly defines what happens to somebody eternally. And that's following Christ and knowing the sacrifices that have been made lead to riches in heaven. It's great to have success here on earth, but what really matters is what happens when your short time on earth is gone. And I want to encourage you, and if you have any prayer requests, I will pray for you as well, and I welcome those as well. So I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll catch up with you soon. God bless you.